Hi, you guys, it's Mrs. Palmer. I am so sorry that my webcam on my home computer doesn't work, so you will just have to listen to my voice and not see my face. Thank you to all of you who have completed all of the lessons that I've given you up until this point. I know that doing school online is really hard. I hope that these videos that I am making you are helpful for you. Also, I hope that I'm not overloading you. So this week you will have 2 ALEKS assignments to do. You'll have one to do today, and then you will have another one to do on Thursday. And we were scheduled to have Friday off this week, and so instead of giving you 3 lessons for the week, I decided to just give you 2, and I hope that's okay with you, which I'm sure that it is. Today's lesson is on simple interest, and simple interest is when the interest on a loan or investment is calculated only on the amount initially invested or loaned. Some examples of simple interest include the cost of borrowing money to pay for college, or the cost of borrowing money to pay for a car, or the amount of money earned on an investment. And I'm going to show you a couple of different short video clips to help explain this a little bit better.
What are interest rates? Presented by WallStreetSurvivor.com. Interest is a fee paid by someone who borrows money to the person he borrows it from, and an interest rate is the amount that borrower pays. Here's Ben. Ben just graduated from high school and was accepted into a top university. Sounds great, right? Only problem, the tuition is too much for him and his parents to bear. So, Ben and his folks head over to the bank to borrow money for school. Ben talks to the banker and gets a loan for $50,000 to pay for his education. But why would the bank do this? Ben's a nice guy and all, but what's their benefit in lending out the money? The answer is interest rates. In exchange for the $50,000 loan, the bank will charge Ben 5% interest each year until the loan is repaid. So each year, Ben will pay the bank $2,500 in interest. Interest is almost like paying rent on the money you're borrowing. Here's another scenario. Imagine Ben has saved up $10,000 that he keeps in a savings account at the bank. By keeping his cash there, he is actually lending his money to the bank. The bank can then use this money for investments or to lend to other people. Just like the bank charged Ben an interest rate for the money he borrowed for university, the bank pays Ben an interest rate in exchange for keeping his money with them.
Hi class, this is Billy. Hello Billy. Billy wants to buy his very first car. He finds a car he likes at the car yard. How much, he asks the salesperson. $20,000. Billy checks his pockets. I only have $2,000. I still need another $18,000 to buy the car. Where will I find that much money? Hello Billy, my name is Mr. Bank. You have 2 options to buy this car. Option number 1, you can save the money over time and then buy the car then. Or option number 2, you can borrow the money, buy the car now, and pay me back the money over a set time period. Billy scratches his head. This sounds too good to be true. I can just borrow money, buy the car now, and pay it all back later on. That's true, says Mr. Bank. However, borrowing money is not free. We will charge you a fee, which we call interest, to loan the money. So how much will this fee cost me? Says Billy. Well, says Mr. Bank, we loan money at an interest rate of 10% per year. In your case, given you already have $2,000 deposit, we will loan you $18,000. This will cost you $1,800 interest every year. The longer you take to pay back the loan, the more interest you pay. So, asks Billy, if I take 5 years to pay off the $18,000 that you loan me, how much will this cost? It is merely $1,800 times 5, which is $9,000 interest. Billy thinks this sounds pretty good. The bank advances Billy $18,000. Billy combines this with his $2,000 deposit and pays this to the car salesperson. Billy drives off in his nice new car. However, he now has to repay the loan and the interest over the next 5 years. Everyone is happy. Billy has his first car. The car salesperson has sold the car and now has $20,000, and the bank will be repaid $18,000 principal over 5 years and will earn on top of that interest of $9,000 for loaning Billy the money.
All three of the examples that you just watched were for simple interest. And in your lesson today in ALEKS, you are going to be completing some problems where you use what's called the simple interest formula. The simple interest formula is a formula that we can find for calculating how much interest will be paid based on the amount either borrowed or the amount of the investment. Okay, so when we look at the simple interest formula, it is I equals P times R times T. Notice that all three of these variables are right next to each other, and you guys know that in algebra, when variables are next to each other, there is implied multiplication. So even though the multiplication symbol is not in between these three variables, these are being multiplied together. Okay, so the formula is I equals P times by R times by T. Now, I is the interest. Okay, that's the amount of money that is going to be paid back to the bank for loaning the money for a car, or that is the amount of money that's going to be paid back to a person who invests their money in a bank, or that's the amount of money that someone is going to need to pay back if they borrowed money to attend college. Okay, so that's what the I is. It's the interest. The P is principal. Okay, so that is the initial amount that is borrowed or invested. Okay, that's your principal. The R is the annual interest rate. Okay, now your rate is going to be given to you as a percentage, and in order to use the simple interest formula, you need to change that percentage into a decimal. And I know you guys know how to do that. We've worked on that a lot in this class. And then the T is time in years. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you a couple of examples of how we use this formula to calculate simple interest. Okay, so here's an example for a car loan. It says, Roxana borrows $6,000 to buy a car at 18.5% simple interest to be paid back over 5 years. Okay, so to calculate the interest, or the I, we're going to use the formula I equals P times R times T. Now, when we look back at the scenario we were given, Roxana borrows $6,000. Okay, that is your P. That is your principal. That is the amount that she borrowed. Okay, so that's $6,000. And then it says to buy a car at 18.5%. Now that is going to be your interest rate. Your interest rate is 18.5%. And then remember that I told you your interest rate always needs to be changed into a decimal in order to plug it into the formula. Okay, so if we want to remove the percent sign, we take this 18.5, we divide by 100, and it becomes 0.185. Okay, so for the R, we're going to use 0.185. And then the time, this says that it's going to be paid back in 5 years. So the T is going to be 5. Okay, now to calculate the interest, or the I, we plug in $6,000 for the P, we plug in 0.185 for the R, we plug in 5 for the T, the time in years is 5 years, we multiply all of those together and we get $5,550. Okay, so Roxana borrowed $6,000 for the car, but the amount that it's going to cost her to borrow that amount of money, okay, the interest is $5,550. So the total cost of the car would be $11,550. Okay, so let me show you another example. This one is for an investment. It says find the simple interest for $500 invested at 6.25% for 3 years. Okay, remember your formula for simple interest is I equals P times R times T. So in order to use this formula, we need to identify our P, our R, and our T. So the principal, that is the initial amount either borrowed or invested. So that is going to be $500. That is our principal. Okay? The rate is 6.25%. And then remember, when we plug this into the formula, we need to change this percent into a decimal. So I'm going to take 6.25, I'm going to divide by 100, and that's going to give me 0.0625. And then the time is 3 years. Okay? And in order to find the interest, we take the principal of 500, we multiply it by the rate, and then we multiply it by the time, and we get $93.75. Okay, so if it was a $500 investment and the interest earned was $93.75, that means that the total amount in the account is now $593.75. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do some of the ones that you're going to see on your ALEKS assignment. This is just like question number 1. Yolanda deposits $5,000 into an account that pays simple interest at a rate of 3% per year. How much interest will she be paid in the first 2 years? Okay, so remember to calculate the simple interest, or the I. We do principal times rate times time. Okay, so in this case, if Yolanda deposits $5,000, that is our P. That's our principal amount. That's her initial deposit. Okay, and then it says that the account pays a simple interest rate of 3% per year. Remember, we want this to be a decimal, so we change that to 0.03. And then the time in years, so it says how much interest will she be paid in the first 2 years. Okay, so now we take the I and we do principal, which is 5,000. We times that by our rate, which is 0.03, and then we times that by 2. Okay, and that gives us $300. So the interest earned in the first 2 years would be $300, and that means that she would now have $5,300 in her account if she only ever made her initial deposit of $5,000. Okay, so let's look at another one. This is just like question number 2 on your ALEKS assignment. It says to be able to take her dream vacation, Rachel decides to save for 5 years. She opens a savings account with $700. The account pays simple interest at an annual rate of 4%. She doesn't make any more deposits. Answer the following questions. Okay? How much total interest will Rachel earn? To figure that out, we are going to use our simple interest formula. I equals P times R times T. We know that our principal amount, or our P, is 700. Okay? That's how much she puts in her savings account. The interest rate is 4%. And to change that to a decimal, we divide by 100, so that's 0.04. And then the time in years that she saves for this dream vacation is 5 years. Okay, so for question A, to find the interest, we're going to take the principal, which is 700. We're going to multiply by the rate, which is 0.04, and then we're going to multiply by the time of 5 years. And the total amount of interest earned is $140. So for part A, we would say $140. How much total interest will Rachel earn? That would be $140. What will the total amount in the account be, including the interest? Well, if she started with 700 and then she earned another 140 on simple interest, the total amount in the account would now be $840. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at another one. This is like question number 3 on your Alex assignment. Maya opened a savings account with $4,000 and was paid simple interest at an annual rate of 2%. When Maya closed the account, she was paid $240 in interest. How long was the account open for in years? Now, this one is a little bit different. Instead of having to figure out the interest, we want to know for how many years was the account open. Okay, so we're going to use our simple interest formula. I equals P times R times T. We're going to plug in everything that we know into this formula, and then we're going to solve for the thing that we don't know. Okay, so Maya opened a savings account with $4,000. That was her principal. Okay, that's her initial investment. She was paid a simple interest rate of 2%. So we want to change that to 0.02 by dividing by 100. And when Maya closed the account, she was paid $240 in interest. So this time we know our I is 240. And the thing that we don't know is the time in years. Okay, so now let's take this formula. We're going to plug 240 in for the I. We're going to plug 4,000 in for the P. We're going to plug 0.02 in for the R. And we're going to leave the T as a variable. We don't know what that is. Okay, now this is just an equation that you guys know how to solve. In order to solve this equation for the T, we would first multiply the 4,000 times by 0.02, and that gives us 80 times by T equal to 240. And if we want to know what T is, we have to get rid of the multiplication of 80, so we divide by 80 on both sides. So T equals 3. That means that the account was open for 3 years. Okay, let's look at another one where you have to solve for something other than the simple interest. Okay, this is like question number 5 on your assignment. Keisha borrowed $900 from a bank for 5 years and was charged simple interest. The total interest that she paid on the loan was $90. As a percentage, what was the annual interest rate of her loan? Okay, so the thing that we don't know here is the R. Now let's figure out what we do know. So we're going to use the formula for simple interest. I equals P times R times T. We know our I, the total interest that she paid on the loan was $90. We know our P is $900. That was how much she borrowed from the bank. That was her initial amount. We know that the time in years is 5, and the R is the thing that we don't know. Okay, so let's plug into this formula. Instead of the I, we're going to plug in 90. Instead of the P, we're going to plug in 900. Instead of the R, well, we're not going to plug in anything because we don't know that. So let's leave that an R. And then instead of the T, we are going to plug in 5. Okay, so now we are solving this equation for the R. So our first step would be to multiply the 905 together. So that's going to be 4,500 times by R equal to 90. And if we want to get the R by itself, we have to get rid of the multiplication of 4,500. So we divide by 4,500 on both sides. Okay, so that gives us a decimal of 0.02. Okay, so remember your R is always a percentage. And on your Alex assignment, it's going to ask you to enter it in as a percentage. So if we want to take 0.02 and write it as a percentage, we've got to times by 100. So that means our R is 2%. Okay, and I want to show you one more where you have to solve for something different than the I. Okay, so Allie invested in a savings bond for 2 years and was paid simple interest at an annual rate of 4%. The total interest that he earned was $16. How much did he invest? Now this time, if it's asking how much he invested, that means we are trying to figure out the P. We do not know the initial amount invested. Okay, let's figure out the things that we do know. We know that the time in years was 2. We know the rate is 4%, which we changed to 0.04 in order to use the simple interest formula. We know that the I, the total interest earned, is 16. Okay, and we don't know the P. So if we take the formula I equals P times R times T, we can plug in 16 for the I, and we don't know the P. We know the rate is 0.04, and we know the time in years is 2. Okay, so to solve this equation for the P, we're going to multiply the 0.04 and the 2 together, and that gives us 0.08, and then we have times by P equals 16. And then our last step in solving for the P is to get rid of the multiplication of 0.08. So we're going to divide by 0.08 on both sides. Okay, and that gives us $200. So that means the principal amount, or the how much he invested, was $200. Okay, now you guys are going to do the ALEKS assignment that is called Simple Interest number 1. That's the one that I want you to work on today. And then you will have another assignment on Thursday called Simple Interest number 2, and I will send you a video for that on Thursday morning. If you're having any questions or you need some help, please email me. I'm super happy to help you. Even though we're not together in person, I am still available to help you, and I want you to be successful in this class. So I hope you have a really great day, and I really do hope that I get to see you soon.